My name is Sarah Evans. I'm 32, and for 8 years I was a ghost to my family. Until the moment I stepped into my grandmother's funeral and shattered my sister's flawless world with 5 quiet words. The chapel was overflowing, every seat taken, which would have thrilled Grandma Clara. She always said she wanted a grand turnout when her day arrived. I slipped through the rear entrance as the service started, my military dress blues concealed under a long black coat. I'd landed from Kandahar just 12 hours before, still carrying the grit of the desert in my chest and the burden of leadership on my shoulders. I spotted them instantly. My family, gathered in the front pew like a portrait I'd been erased from years ago. My sister Maria sat between our parents, her high-end gown likely costing more than most people's rent. Her husband, James, the polished financier, had an arm draped around her, ever the protector. My nephew Lucas, now 10, squirmed in his tiny suit beside them. 8 years. 8 years since I'd last seen them. The final memory was Maria's wedding, where I was a newly commissioned second lieutenant, striving to prove I belonged in the Evans lineage. I could still hear the hushed murmurs, feel the sidelong glances, the way voices faded when I neared. Poor Sarah, they'd whispered, still chasing her army dreams. When will she grow up and get a proper job? Maria had been especially cutting that night, her words slicing through the reception hall after too many glasses of wine. My sister thinks she's some kind of warrior, she declared to her new in-laws, but she's just dodging reality, playing costume in the military because she can't handle being a woman in the real world. I left the next morning without a word. Now, as Father Joseph delivered Grandma's eulogy, that old ache twisted in my gut, the one that had fueled my drive to succeed, to push harder, to prove them wrong in ways they'd never grasp. Grandma Clara was the only one who saw my potential, who recognized grit where others saw defiance, bravery where others saw folly. She wrote to me without fail, even when the rest of the family turned away. Her letters tracked me from officer training to my first assignment in Texas, through Special Forces training, to Afghanistan, Iraq, and back to Afghanistan. She knew about the Silver Star, the Purple Heart, the swift promotions that made me a colonel faster than most. She knew about the covert operations, the lives preserved, the gut-wrenching calls made in desert outposts and mountain hamlets. But she never told them. Let them discover it themselves, Mija, she wrote in her final letter received just 2 weeks prior. When the moment's right, they'll see who you've become. The service ended and I watched my family head toward the cemetery. I trailed behind, keeping my coat fastened, my colonel's insignia hidden beneath dark fabric. At the graveside, I stood behind a group of Clara's neighbors, close enough to eavesdrop, but far enough to stay unseen. That's when Maria's voice cut through the afternoon like a whip. I can't believe she didn't even show up, she was telling our mother, loud enough for others to catch. Grandma Clara loved her so much, and Sarah just abandoned her. My mother nodded, her face heavy with sorrow. She was always so self-centered, even as a girl. And now with this whole military obsession. Obsession? Maria scoffed. Mom, she's probably a corporal or something, standing watch at some gate in the middle of nowhere. Remember what James's colleague said? She's posted at some obscure base in Afghanistan, probably never even saw a fight. It's all just a costly game of make-believe. My fists tightened in my coat pockets. 8 years of leading troops into danger. 8 years of making split-second choices between life and death. 3 tours in war zones. A Silver Star for valor under enemy fire. A Purple Heart from the roadside bomb that nearly ended me and my unit outside Mosul. And to them, I was still just playing pretend. The cemetery ceremony wrapped up, and people drifted toward the community hall for the reception. I lingered by the grave as the crowd thinned, stepping forward when only the groundskeepers remained. "Farewell, Grandma," I whispered, placing a single white lily on the fresh soil. "Thank you for believing." I squared my shoulders and headed to the community hall. The reception was in full swing when I arrived. I kept my coat on, moving through the crowd like a shadow, catching snippets of chatter. Maria held court near the refreshment table, surrounded by cousins and family friends, spinning tales of her thriving husband, her perfect son, her idyllic life. Sarah was always the letdown, I overheard her say to Aunt Sophia. Mom and Dad did everything for her, but she just couldn't be normal. Couldn't find a good man, couldn't settle down. Instead, she runs off to play soldier and breaks Grandma's heart by never visiting. "Where's she stationed now?" Sophia asked. Maria shrugged, "Some base in the middle of nowhere. Afghanistan, probably, maybe cleaning offices or something. You know how the military is, they'll take anyone." A cold weight settled in my chest, not quite anger, but something heavier, more final. That's when I saw him. General Harper stood near the back of the room, still in his dress blues, his 3 stars glinting under the lights. He was speaking quietly with a man I didn't know, but his eyes were scanning the crowd, searching for someone, searching for me. I approached, my pulse pounding. He saw me halfway across the room, his lined face breaking into a smile that was both proud and concerned. "Colonel Evans," he said softly when I reached him. "I wasn't sure you'd make it." "Just got in, sir," I replied, suddenly aware that my family was only 20 feet away, still oblivious to my presence. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said. "I knew Clara well. She volunteered at the VA hospital for 30 years. She never stopped talking about you. Tears threatened, but I forced them back. Thank you for being here, General." "It means, Sarah," the voice sliced through the room like a thunderclap. Maria stood frozen by the refreshment table, her plate hovering midair, staring at me with wide eyes. The buzz of conversation faded as heads turned. My parents saw me next, my mother's hand clutching her chest, my father's face flashing through confusion, shock, and something like regret. "Sarah," my mother hurried toward me, arms outstretched, but I stepped back instinctively. "Hello, Mom," I said quietly. "Mija, you're here. We thought Maria said you were deployed. I was." I looked past her to Maria, still rooted in place, her face pale beneath her flawless makeup. I heard what she said at the cemetery. The room fell silent now, 50 pairs of eyes watching our family saga unfold like a drama. Maria spoke first. "Sarah, we didn't know you were here. You should have told us." "Should I?" I asked, my voice carrying across the hushed room. "What would you have said? More about how I'm playing soldier? About how I'm just a gate guard in the desert?" Maria's face flushed. Actually, General Harper stepped forward, his voice resonating with the weight of 4 decades in uniform. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." He moved to my side, his presence commanding the room's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said clearly, "allow me to introduce Colonel Sarah Evans, commanding officer of the 75th Ranger Regiment's 2nd Battalion. She just returned from her 3rd combat tour, leading 700 soldiers in some of the most perilous regions on Earth." The silence hung heavy, like a held breath. "Colonel Evans," he continued, turning to me with precision, "earned the Silver Star for leading a rescue operation that saved 32 Afghan civilians from a Taliban stronghold. She was injured in the mission and refused evacuation until every one of her soldiers was safe." Maria's plate slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. "She's also," General Harper added, his gaze steady on mine, "the youngest woman ever to command a Ranger battalion. And as of yesterday, she's been selected for promotion to Brigadier General." Whispers and gasps rippled through the room. I saw my father slump into a chair, his face ashen. My mother stood frozen, her mouth moving soundlessly. But I watched Maria, who had spent 8 years telling anyone who'd listened that I was a failure, a letdown, a woman playing dress-up in a man's world. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger, or maybe seeing me truly for the first time. "General Evans," I corrected softly, meeting my sister's eyes. "As of next month." Maria made a small noise, half gasp, half sob. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. General Harper nodded with respect. Clara Evans never missed a ceremony, every promotion, every medal, every homecoming. She sat in the front row and told everyone about her granddaughter, the war hero. He paused, his voice softening. "She was the proudest woman I've ever known." Tears welled up then, the ones I'd held back through 8 years of silence. 8 years of being dismissed by those who should have known better. "She knew," Maria whispered. "She knew everything," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Every medal, every mission, every soldier I brought home. She knew because she cared enough to ask." I looked around at the faces staring back. Cousins who'd written me off, aunts who'd gossiped about my choices, family friends who'd pitied my parents for their wayward daughter. "I didn't come here for your apologies," I said clearly. "I came to honor the woman who believed in me when no one else did. The woman who saw strength where you saw defiance, courage where you saw failure." I turned to Maria, who was crying now, makeup streaking down her face. "You want to know why I never came back?" I asked quietly. "Because I was busy becoming someone worthy of Grandma Clara's faith. Someone she could take pride in. Someone who could defend this nation and the freedom that lets you stand here judging people you don't understand." Maria opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "I'm not the same person who left 8 years ago," I continued. "I've held dying soldiers in my arms. I've made choices that saved lives and choices that haunt me. I've earned the respect of some of the finest people this country has. And I did it while you were here, telling everyone I was a disappointment. I unbuttoned my coat and let it fall, revealing my dress blues, the rows of ribbons, my colonel's insignia shining on my shoulders. The room was so still I could hear my own pulse. Grandma Clara wasn't ashamed of me, I said finally. She was proud, prouder than you'll ever comprehend. I turned to General Harper, who watched me with something like fatherly pride. Thank you for coming, sir. It would have meant the world to her, he nodded. The memorial is tomorrow at Arlington, full honors, she earned it. Arlington? My mother whispered. Clara Evans volunteered at the VA hospital for 30 years, General Harper explained. She's being laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors by special request of the Joint Chiefs. I saw Maria's knees buckle. James caught her before she fell. Sarah, my father said, his voice cracking. We didn't know, we never knew. I looked at him, the man who'd raised me, who'd once been my idol, who'd let his disappointment in my path poison 8 years of our bond. You never asked, I said simply. I picked up my coat and headed for the door, General Harper falling in step beside me. Colonel, Maria called out, her voice raw. Sarah, please, I didn't know. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I paused at the door and looked back one last time. Tomorrow, I said quietly, when they play taps for Grandma Clara at Arlington, when they fold that flag and hand it to me as her next of kin, when you see 700 Rangers in dress blues standing at attention for her, maybe then you'll understand what you spent 8 years ridiculing. I stepped into the afternoon light, leaving behind 8 years of silence and a room full of people who finally saw who I had become. Outside, General Harper placed a steady hand on my shoulder. Your grandmother would be proud, he said softly. I nodded, allowing myself a small smile. Yes, sir, she would. As we walked to his staff car, I heard the door swing open behind us. Maria's voice carried across the lot, broken and pleading. Sarah, please don't go, but I kept walking. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Some words once spoken can't be undone. I had a funeral to prepare and a grandmother to honor, the woman who saw the soldier in me before I even knew she was there. The rest of them would have to live with the truth of who I was and who they'd chosen to ignore. This version maintains the same length, approximately 1,800 words, structure, and emotional weight as the original, with altered names, specific details, and phrasing to create a unique narrative while preserving the story's core. Let me know if you need further adjustments.